It's my pleasure to welcome into the Teacher's Honor Wall Dick Dussault. Dick spent 29 years at Masconomet from 1966 to 1995. He began here as a business teacher, teaching 9 years at Masco in the business department, and then had spent other time prior to that at Danvers in Long Island teaching business. He was the Masconomet business department chair for 4 years. And then he was the high school principal at Masco for 11 years, the assistant superintendent at Masconomet for 11 years, and then he was the superintendent here at Masconomet for an additional 3 years. In addition, all three of Dick's children graduated from Masconomet High School, including his daughter Tricia, who then went on to teach social studies here and was the social studies department chair, and is currently the principal at Manchester Essex High School. He has 2 grandchildren currently at Masconomet. His grandson Tim is heading into his junior year, and his granddaughter Madeline is going into she'll be coming into her freshman year next year up at the high school. I basically have 4 stories that I want to share from my experience when I came to Masconomet of Dick Dussault. And each one's a little bit different, but each one comes from a place of utmost respect. When I first got hired, I taught for 2 years in New Hampshire, and I came down for an interview. I applied. I didn't even know where Masconomet was, even though I grew up in Wakefield. I had never heard of it. I didn't know it even existed. And I went through the first interview, and then I went through the second interview, and then I remember thinking I had the job after the second interview, only to have Joe Casey and some others say, "Oh no, you need to be approved by Dr. Dussault." So I went over for the third meeting with Dr. Dussault over at the superintendent's office, and it was clear right from the get-go that this was his school and his school district. And he came out from behind his desk. He had a 3-piece suit on and introduced himself and had me sit down across from him as a desk. And I remember being immediately impressed by him and, to be quite honest, intimidated. And he talked and asked me about myself and went through my resume, but then he also laid out his expectations of me and expectations of the school. And he expected me to get involved, to not only come here and do a good job teaching social studies, but he challenged me to really become a part of the fabric of Masconomet. And I can remember leaving that interview being really impressed by him and really feeling like, as I said, that this was his school, that this was the man in charge of this place. The second thing I remember is during the course of that first year, having the older veteran teachers tell me to make sure that my blinds in my room were uniform and that they all hung 3/4 of the way down. And at first I kind of thought they were joking with me because I really didn't understand why, but then they were like, no, you want them to hang 3/4 of the way down because Dick is a stickler on that. And he was. And having OCD myself on some things, I actually grew to appreciate and respect that. And as I think about that over time, I'm actually really not poking fun of it. It was one of those things, the details matter. Dick also had the big picture for Masconomet, having come up all the way through the ranks, but he also paid attention to details, to the small things, to the fine things, and there was nothing that got past him. And I really admired and appreciated that. I also admired that there were either people who were in Dick's camp or people in the building who weren't. And I appreciated and respected the fact that he always, while he listened to others and appreciated different opinions and appreciated different thoughts, he was strong in his opinion. And to me, he epitomized the word leader. And he was willing to take on a challenge, whether that was a good negotiation session or topics or issues that the faculty thought were important, and to hear them all the way out and to vet them, but to also see the big picture and to keep in mind what the district needed and the students needed. And so I always admired his ability to pay attention to the small details as the blinds, but pay attention to the big details of the whole school district. And to be quite honest with you, this beautiful building that we inherited back in 2001 is in no small part to all the efforts that Dick Dussault put in over the years. In a way, this is really the building that he created to a large degree, and he invested his time and energy in. And I just want you to know, Dick, that as we've gone through the years and we've inhabited this building, that's not lost on those of us who were here in the old building and who have migrated into the new building, and we're appreciative of that. The third story, was in March of 1993, and it was in the spring of my first year here teaching at Masconomet. And in the old high school was up where the middle school is now. And there were mailboxes. You had the principal's office, then you had a series of mailboxes, and then you had the assistant principal's office. But the mailboxes were in between. And those were usually full about 3 or 4 times a day, which probably in retrospect was easier than having your mailbox full with 25 emails every hour. But you would go down during your free periods, before school, during your free periods, and after school, and you would pick up your mail, chat with Betty and Elaine, and catch up on whatever day-to-day events you needed. But I distinctly remember one day in February going into my mailbox, and there was a check, and it wasn't payday. We didn't have direct deposit back then, but there was a check, and I remember thinking, this has got to be wrong because today's not payday. And I went back up to my room and I opened the check, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $500. And whether you had been here for 1 year, like I was, or you had been here for 30 plus years, everybody basically got a check for $500. And what I found out was that money was money that the district had gotten additional monies from school choice. And Dick decided that money should be best spent on teachers. And I thought that always spoke volumes about where your values were. It would have been easy to turn around and put that money into a new technology or put that money into a new roof. But he invested it back in us. And I never forgot that as a first-year teacher, that he valued us. And again, I appreciate that. The fourth story was in March of 1994, my second year here. And this was, it was on a Wednesday evening. And I'll blame Jim Pugh for this. We went to the league sports meetings at the Ipswich VFW. And each year in March, all the sports have a league meeting, and all the coaches go. And for they talk about different rule changes and so on and so forth. And lots of administrators go as well. And I was just going to become the new varsity baseball coach. We were about a week away from starting our season, and so this was my first league coaches meeting that I was at. And so you would always go to the league coaches meeting, I think at Ipswich High School, and then everyone would migrate over to the Ipswich VFW afterwards. And Dick was there that evening, and he stayed for probably about an hour or so, and he graciously bought a round for the coaches, and then he said good night and he left. And Jim Pugh and I were going to leave right behind him, but one more became two more, and I got in very late that evening. I could probably get in about 4 o'clock in the morning, much later than I should have. And I hadn't had a sick day in a year and a half up until that point. I hadn't missed a personal day, I hadn't been out for anything. But I decided at about 6 a.m. on Thursday morning that it probably was not in my best interest, nor of the interest of the students, that I show up to work that day. So I called in sick for the first time in 2 years. Friday morning I came into school. I go into the main office, I see Betty and Elaine. Hi Betty, hi Elaine, how are you? I go to my mailbox, and sure enough, there in my mailbox is a handwritten note. Out late Wednesday, sick on Thursday. DD, Dick Dussault. I go up to my room, I'm sweating like I am now, I'm thinking about this. So I write back and I go, Dick, you're absolutely right. I don't have a leg to stand on. Problem is, I didn't have one yesterday either. And I sent it back, hoping upon hope that this was gonna go over well. I got a call early the next week to go over, Mr. Dussault wants to see you. So I went over to see Dr. Dussault. I sat across that table like I had the first day when I interviewed with him, thinking that, appropriately so, that I am going to get disciplined and I'm going to get written up. So I apologized and I said, Dick, I apologize, shouldn't have happened. If you need to dock me pay, whatever it is, I get it 100%. Dick looked at me, he pushed the note across the table, and the first thing he said to me is, that's one of the funniest things I've ever gotten in all my years here at Masconomet. So we chuckled a little bit, me a little bit more nervously than him, and he said, just don't let it happen again. And it didn't. And again, as a young teacher, that stood out for me, that the manner in which he handled it, which is pay attention to the small things, to the details, he knew it. He knew why I was out, and he called me on it appropriately so. And when I went back over there, I think the only thing that was important to him was that I was honest about it and I didn't try to lie my way out of it. And I could distinctly, as I said, remember sitting across that table, really appreciating the manner in which he handled it. And I think for me, that has spoke volumes about his leadership, who he is as a man, who he is as an educator, paying attention to the small details while always having the larger picture at hand. So for me today, really, Dick, it's an honor to present you, and I thank you for all your service on behalf of everybody. So just stand and be acknowledged.